Hello and welcome. My name is Matthew Cummiskey. I am an associate professor at Westchester University in Pennsylvania, and I'll be presenting today about elementary school wellness education, an integrated approach to teaching the whole child. It's also the title of a book that I'm working on with Dr. Fran Cleland at Westchester University and being published by Human Kinetics. Now, my job at Westchester University is to train health and physical education teachers. And we're trying to get them to think more about wellness and promoting the whole child. And that can be a little challenging because at least in the elementary schools around here, we tend to get a very heavy emphasis on physical education. And in some cases, schools, we don't really get any emphasis on health education. Now, we're trying to move away from that, thinking of them as distinct and separate fields, and instead thinking of them as an integrated field where both can play off of one another to help benefit students' overall wellness. So if I were to define it, we call it an interdisciplinary approach to promoting well-being through family, school, and community interventions. More about that later. The intent is to imbue students with the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to lead a healthy lifestyle that carries forward into adulthood. So not just about being active in the gym and then teaching about health, knowledge, concepts, and skills, but letting those different ideas percolate together, right, in a way that supports learning, promotes the connections between the two fields, and better represents how adults approach wellness, not about, well, which field am I in, about how can I better my own personal well-being. Okay, and we constantly are working to infuse related content together that is both physically active and building health-enhancing skills. Why school wellness education? As I said, first off, it's a more representative of society and life in general, where people are just looking to be well, and they're not so much concerned about, well, am I in physical wellness, or am I in intellectual wellness, am I in spiritual wellness? We're going to let those all ideas percolate together. All right, we're definitely going to have physical activity involved in it, but we're also going to be working on the different components of wellness at the same time. So it's more integrated. It makes better use of available class time because at the elementary level, which is the focus of the book, there's not as much mandated instructional time as we would like. For example, our local school district, there's probably about 40 days per year that they have wellness education. Not a whole lot of time. And so if you were to say, well, we're going to be physically active on one day and do health enhancing skills on another day, then you really haven't made good use of instructional time. If you have physical activity each day and are working on health enhancing skills each day, then you basically have almost all of those at your disposal instead of chopping them in half. Right, so it makes better use of available class time. Right, better use of facilities. One of the principal complaints PE teachers sometimes talk about, well, why they don't teach as much health content or skills is that they don't have a classroom. Whereas this approach is going to use the gym and use the physical activity space, get kids moving while they're learning health enhancing skills. So you don't need a separate classroom. It's more fun. So by getting kids moving, then, because kids at the elementary level, they love to move, and this ties in with that. So every lesson involves physical activity. Right? Students are active every day and addresses health standards and PE standards simultaneously, which is a really big deal. Better use of class time, more integrated approach. So let's take a look at what a lesson plan looks like. That's kind of the big picture. And as part of the book, we're developing a whole bunch of lesson plans, okay, for different grades and topics. And this one here is focused on the cardiovascular system and movement patterns, all right, and fitness. Make it a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so we got the topic up top here, and then we got the grade level. And notice how we have the shape outcomes, and we also have the National Health Education Performance Indicators. So they're both going to be there. And we've got lesson objectives written in a traditional format. Students will be able to, action, verb, and the product. And you can see here, at least in the movement patterns, we're up to more advanced skills that are appropriate for 3rd and 4th grade. Leaping and jumping, transferring of weight. Okay. So we've advanced some of those movement patterns up at the same time that we're working on cardiovascular skills, because again, we're working on health enhancing skills related to learning about the cardiovascular system and physical activity skills. And again, that's the hallmark of this approach. It takes place in the gym. The materials are listed here in a fairly traditional fashion, the number and the item. Skill cues, they're basically the critical elements for how to perform a skill. In this case, we got the leap, the jump, and the transfer of weight. In our program, we restrict these to 3 to 5 cues, so it's not too overwhelming to explain to students, but still not too abbreviated that they don't know what to do. So list those skills. The lesson introduction, and all lessons come in this format, asks the what, the why, and the how. What are we learning today? That age-old question that students ask. We've got the skills listed here, and we've got the heart pathways and the blood flow through the heart. Physical activity skills, health enhancing skills. Why are we learning this? To improve motor skill technique, build cardiovascular endurance, and to learn about how the heart works and flows. How will learning be measured? In this case, we've provided options in this lesson plan of 3 different choices, all based upon the same assessment. Many of our lesson plans have assessments in them because we believe that assessment promotes teacher growth and helps demonstrate mastery of the content. So teacher discussion, then we come down into the activities, and there's 4 of them for this particular lesson plan. And then later on, there's always resources. So I will address some of these resources throughout the lesson plan. But they're all designed in this fashion. The first part, learning team leaders, or it could be squads, get the worksheet, resource 1, and distribute it to their team. Basically, what they're going to do is be working on filling in the worksheet so they can learn about some of the different parts of the heart. Now, as a teacher, you're going to lead some of this discussion, see how much they can do initially, and then you're going to help fill in what they might not know. Where it is located, so start off just generally, where is the heart located? Approximately how big is it? Slightly on the left side, usually about the size of a fist. And then put the names on them and fill in the blanks as much as possible. What is number 1? And so on down the list. So the teacher leads the students through this worksheet. So some differentiations. All the lessons include some differentiations somewhere. So we call them a challenge task as a way of making it more challenging for some students, or simplifying tasks, making it either easier so that everyone is on the appropriate developmental level. Challenge task students will spell the heart terms on their own so they don't actually get the word bank, and then be able to define them to write that information in. Simplifying task, students will point to the heart term and draw a line to it. So ways to make it more on level with students. Next is the main part of the activity, which is an obstacle course. And there's a whole bunch of equipment listed. Students keep the worksheet from part 1, so resource 1. They're going to build an obstacle course in groups. And this is great because it makes students physically represent what a heart looks like using the available equipment. Build a representation of the heart using the equipment that's provided, which is all stacked up on the side of the gym. And this lesson plan does list different kinds of equipment, but again, you can expand upon this list and add more items depending on what you have in your equipment closet. So once the obstacles course is, and it's going to take them a while to build that course because they've got to take their worksheet and the equipment and make a 3D representation of it that's approximately to scale of the resource. It's going to take kinesthetic intelligence, it's going to take verbal, linguistic. So we can take a lot of intelligences and collaborating together, which is a nice part of this lesson plan. All right, once the obstacle course is complete, and obviously as a teacher, you would circulate and help them build their representation of the heart. Students, once it's complete, learning teams move through the heart on a scooter according to the blood flow pathway. Students can move on their stomachs or go forward or backward. Next, they're going to be moving through the heart using the movement patterns, the leap, the jump, the transfer away from hands to feet prescribed by the teacher. So we're getting cardiovascular fitness, we're getting fundamental movement skills, and we're getting health-enhancing skills knowledge of the heart and its functions. Okay? So they get to practice in their heart. When they're finished, they get to show their hearts to some of the other groups. And as they walk through it as a group, they're going to name each of the structures. They'll stop at the valves, they'll enter into the right atrium, they'll stop at the right atrioventricular valve, they'll be down to the right ventricle, and so forth. So say the names as they pass through the structures. Now, fourth graders, you can advance up a little bit, and we've built in some adjustments for different grade levels. If this lesson can be taught across different grade levels. Have students build the blood vessels to and from the lungs. So you're going to have your pulmonary artery, your pulmonary vein, and then you'll have the lungs. Right? So we have some optional assessments. And this assessment can be done as a self-assessment, a peer assessment, or teacher administered. So we'll scroll down to that in the resource. Okay, and then we have a relatively straightforward and easy to administer assessment based upon the cues that we've specified earlier in the critical elements section. Again, it can be a self, it can be peer, or it can be teacher administered, so it's meant to be flexible. All right. Next, we have an activity called On the Line. Students will stand on a line. And that's, again, a nice thing about doing this activity in the gym. There's lots of space for this. Teacher will randomly say one of the 10 habits listed in resource 3. All right. And if the habit is healthy, students will step forward from the line. If they believe it is unhealthy, they will step back. Teacher discusses the correct answer with each. So in here is the different health habits. Getting enough sleep, not sitting for too long, smoking. So things that are important in terms of cardiovascular health. And then the last one, this is kind of an optional activity. So we recognize that schools have different amount of time for wellness education, some 30 minutes, some 40 minutes, some 45, some 50. All right, and I'm sure there's other variations beyond that, so we have some optional activities. And this is what we call an oxygen relay. And basically you're going to have 2 partners. They're going to be competing this relay. So that way it's not a relay where a bunch of kids are sitting around. Both partners are actually moving simultaneously in this relay. So again, we work on cardiovascular fitness. There's a whole bunch of pool noodle slices. You take pool noodles and you slice them down 1 inch thick, so you get all of these pieces, which you can actually divide up again if you wanted in half. And they all start out in this hoop. The job of on go, this person is to move the item from this hoop to that hoop, upon which the partner takes it from this hoop over to here. They're going to see how many of the pool slices that they can move in a predetermined time, say 60 seconds, 90 seconds. And again, you can vary the movement patterns that we were working on earlier. The first person represents the respiratory system, taking the oxygen. The pool noodles represent O2 from the outside air down into the lungs. The second person's job is they're part of the cardiovascular system. They're the heart. They're going to pump the oxygen out to the final hoop, which represents the tissue. Okay. Continue. See how many oxygen molecules can be moved in 1 minute or other times at your discretion. Afterwards, tell students that the relay represents the cardiovascular system. See if they can guess what each person or part represents. ask why aerobic performance depends on both systems working optimally, because it's only as strong as the weakest link, essentially. And then closure. For the closures, we like to involve students in the learning process. So reviews the objectives briefly, and in partners, students take turns listing the hard parts and explaining their function, so as many as they can remember. Then each partner lists one healthy and unhealthy habit to their partner. And that is the conclusion of the lesson plan. So that is what we call school wellness education, a lot like health education or physical education. But there's also the educator side of it, which is another very important part of school wellness, is that the teacher is going to be the point person for the whole school model. So remember, we have the different aspects, and this is an updated version of comprehensive school health with the different components while taking into account the community to promote healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged students. The school wellness educator, more traditionally called the health educator or the physical educator, we're calling them the school wellness educator. They're the person who should be the point person for coordinating and implementing the whole school model. Why? Because they're a trained educator. And true, there are a lot of other educators in the school. They see students on a weekly basis, absolutely. Not just one class, but all the students in the school, and that's important. And lastly, their preparation aligns the most closely with the components of the model. As a health and physical educator, they have, in their teacher training, experienced many different, most of these components. So that's why the school wellness educator is the cornerstone of this model, more so than any other person in a school. They also have the ability to interact with students before school and after school and promote physical activity before, during, and after school as part of that whole wellness education model. And so in conclusion, this presentation was about the education that takes place in the classroom, not from a silo point of view, but from a symbiotic approach that incorporates SHAPE standards, National Health Education Standards, in a manner that's more realistic, more representative of wellness overall, is more fun, makes better use of class time and resources, okay, and most importantly, helps to promote student learning. Well, again, thank you for listening to the presentation and enjoy your day.